Alright, so for our last video of this week, we're going to look at some of the costs and benefits associated with foreign direct investment from both the home country, that is the firm that is, or the country where the firm is located that is undertaking the foreign direct investment, but also the host country perspective, which is the nation that is receiving the inflow of foreign direct investment. Let's start first with looking at the benefits of FDI to that home country. And the first benefit here is the improvement to the balance of payments for the home country that results from the inward flow of foreign earnings. So when a firm from the home country invests in FDI overseas, that subsidiary that they create in another country will hopefully earn a profit for the firm through the sale of various items in that country. The resulting profits from those sales are typically brought back to the home country in the form of those foreign earnings. So that obviously leads to an improvement in terms of the balance of payments, with that cash flowing back into the country like so. Or maybe not quite like that, but you get the picture. The second benefit is the demand for exports which is potentially created, which in turn can lead to job creation in the home country. So what we often find is that when a firm establishes a foreign subsidiary in another country, it usually requires some degree of suppliers to source that foreign operations, and a lot of the time those suppliers are derived from the home country. So the suppliers for the local firm here, when they establish a manufacturing operations, for example, in another country, they may still need the suppliers from our home country, which will then lead to the exporting of those suppliers to source and supply that foreign operation. So that's obviously a good thing for the home country in terms of generating exports, which also hopefully flows on to job creation for those export-oriented supply markets. There are also benefits relating to the increased knowledge that occurs from operating in a foreign environment. So when you set up your foreign subsidiary in another country, operating in a new, different environment of that nation will mean that you'll learn new skills. You'll hopefully learn new manufacturing processes, new management systems that you can identify that might actually be better than what you had previously employed in your home market. So what we end up with is a reverse resource transfer type effect, where you have the skills that you've actually developed and learned overseas being brought back to the home operations in the home country, which hopefully means that your home market operations now will have improved efficiency as you identify newer and potentially better and more efficient ways of running your business. This in turn hopefully will lead to lower prices for the consumer as you become more efficient and understand better and leaner ways of running your local operations. There are unfortunately some costs of foreign direct investment to the home country that it's necessary to be aware of. The first that we'll look at here are the negative effects in terms of the balance of payments. So while we did identify there are some positive implications in terms of the balance of payments for the home country, there are some negative issues here too. Of course, there will be an initial capital outflow when you look to set up a foreign subsidiary. It's going to take a fair bit of money to do that, and so you do see that initial outflow of cash going out of your country to set up that foreign operation. So you're investing in a foreign economy to set up your plant or your operations there initially. The multinational also uses a foreign subsidiary sometimes as a substitute for direct export. So a lot of the times, as we've talked about in previous videos this week, firms will look to, instead of exporting, just bypass all those trade barriers and set up that foreign subsidiary. That's good in terms of all the benefits we've spoken about thus far for FDI, but it does mean that you lose that exporting, which, as we've talked about previously, contributes towards a trade surplus, which is generally seen as a positive thing in terms of a country's economic development. We also see the loss of jobs due to offshoring when firms establish overseas subsidiaries. And this happens all the time. We look at an example in Australia, unlike the company Telstra, that's always in the news, where you hear about Telstra and a lot of other Australian firms, to be honest, who are offshoring or outsourcing many of their things like call centres and maintenance facilities, just because it's so expensive to do these types of basic functions here in Australia. And a lot of the time we see them being sent to lower cost locations like Southeast Asia. So that is not great for the job creation in the home market. It also has a potential to exacerbate the unequal distribution of wealth. So moving a variety of productive jobs offshore in developed countries leaves only the highly specialised occupations, those higher value added jobs, for which only highly educated citizens can qualify. So this isn't typically a problem for you guys listening to this video, because you are going to come out of your time here at Monash with a great degree and a high level of education and hopefully getting great jobs. But for people who are less skilled and who don't have those high qualifications and so aren't able to do the highly skilled jobs, if you're in a developed country, that is a bit of a problem, because a lot of those lower skilled jobs are being sent overseas, which means that you have less opportunities in your home market. As a flow-on effect of this, we're seeing the deindustrialization of many first world economies. A lot of these basic manufacturing industries are being sent to the developing nations, which clearly has its benefits, but not necessarily in terms of the industrialization of those developed economies. And there are question marks over, is that really something that we want? There are also the issue of the only jobs being left in those countries, especially developed nations, are for assembly rather than the actual manufacturing, which is typically less lucrative and profitable industries. Let's look now to the host country, that is, the nation which is receiving the foreign direct investment. It is getting those foreign direct investment inflows. There are some resource transfer effects to be understanding of here. So if you think about it, when you're receiving foreign direct investment into your country, you're having capital and financial resources brought in to establish that operations in your country. You're having an inflow typically of new technologies, especially if you're a developing nation. A lot of developed nations, when they set up their foreign subsidiaries, will look to import or export their technological standards, which is a good thing in terms of your development in the host country. And also management techniques, especially for those developing countries. It's usually a good thing to have developed nations taking over their successful management styles, processes and techniques and implementing them in the developing host country. There are also great things in terms of employment effects, which is all about, of course, jobs, not this kind of jobs. And I would like to point out what somebody in one of the previous years that I taught this unit was like, oh, it's Ashton Kutcher. No, it's Steve Jobs, not Ashton Kutcher. He played him in a movie, not him. Employment effects here, though, are maybe either direct or indirect. So obviously there will be the people who are actually employed by the foreign operations in the host country that is established through the foreign direct investment, which is clear. But there are also less obvious indirect employment benefits here. And that might be in related and supporting industries like your supply industries, which might benefit from the establishment of this new subsidiary in this host market. So we talked previously about how sometimes the suppliers are exported from the home country, but it's likely that there'll be at least some suppliers which are sourced locally, which creates jobs for the related and supporting industries of this new subsidiary. There are also positive balance of payments effects. So in terms of the current account, these foreign subsidiaries which are established in the host country often generate exporting for that host market. So if you think about it, these foreign factories are set up as subsidiaries, and often they will then distribute and serve many of the countries and industries and nations around that host country through the exporting of whatever it is that they actually produce. There are also positive effects in terms of the local competition and economic growth. So obviously the addition of a new player in the form of this newly established subsidiary will have positive effects in terms of market competition. It will force the local competitors to be better, and also usually leads to productivity growth as those firms are forced to become more efficient in the way they run their business.